Just 1 minute, sir.
Sure.
So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this second class on uh, different, language and different areas. We call it functions of language. I'm pleased to introduce Professor Amol Padwad, sir, who is the expert of today. Uh, Professor Padwad is an Indian academic expert, a former teacher, trainer, consultant, community leader, and a pioneer in English language teacher professional development. He is an executive member of INET, Association of English Teachers, operating from Bhandara, Pune, and he's the national president of and a former national president of English Language Teachers Association of India, LTI. He has a professional career spanning 38 years, and he has been, in that time, he has been a teacher, trainer, consultant, researcher, and a community leader. He pioneered English teachers clubs, teachers self-help groups promoting self-initiated professional development in some rural towns of India. He has recently retired as a professor and director of the Center for English Language Education at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Delhi. His numerous professional collaborations and connections with the British Council include his time as a Hornby Scholar at the University of Leeds, and he contributed to several British Council research projects, including our current Future of English Research Program. Sir has been, actively involved in the course creation process as well. Sir has been a reviewer of the entire program. He has, in fact, edited a lot of modules, and on request, he also recorded some video lessons. In time, you'll be able to listen to Sir's videos as well. But we're happy that Sir has consented. I just contacted Sir a couple of days ago, and Sir agreed to take sessions besides him being busy. And Sir has a session at 12. That's why we are little reschedule it to 10:30. So welcome, Sir, and the session is all yours, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ganga, for that generous introduction. And good morning to you, and good morning to all the participants who are here in this room. It is such a pleasure to be back into the room full of teachers, because teachers are the true soldiers of our country who continue to fight without glory, without glamour, in spite of all kinds of challenges, so that the country builds its foundations for generations. Uh, I'm especially happy to be here because the topic, anything to do with language, is so close to my heart that Ganga sir always tempts me at a short notice whenever there is a language related topic, and I can't resist that temptation. But before I proceed further, let me just quickly share my screen and let me know if you can see it.
It's visible, sir.
Yeah, yeah. So, what I plan to do today, uh, okay. So, what I plan to do today is give a glimpse of some themes from the content that you are all expected to cover in your course. And I'll be looking at the second part of the first chapter, the first block. I have chosen three themes to talk about because the time is short. So I'll be just looking at these three aspects: language and communication, language and identity, language and culture. And I apologize in advance that I will be able to only give a very quick overview. But I do believe that, on the one hand, you will have some idea of the complex relationship of language with so many aspects of our lives and our existence. And on the other hand, you will be stimulated enough to read further, to go beyond your textbooks or course materials and expand your understanding and knowledge in this field. So, to begin with, let us talk about language and communication. In the course material, I saw the definition of language as simply communication, which in my view is a very, very limited definition. It's not actually a definition at all. But that's understandable because human beings have been studying language for at least 3,000 years. And so far, we haven't come to a final conclusion about how to define a language. So, in most books on linguistics, you will find a descriptive characterization of language rather than definition. But anyway, we will be looking only at the practical sides of all these relationships. To begin with, let me share some examples with you. All examples have some problem. They are problematic examples. They are uh, incorrect use of language. So here is the first one. The friendly guide want to know that is the writer going to meet Govinda Swami? The Govinda Swami is not wanting to meet him. This is written by someone, and you can, as experienced teachers, you can quickly see that it's a problematic piece of language. It's not a correct piece. Let's look at another example. This is a small paragraph written by a school student, standard 8 students. Science and technology have enriched man's life, but have also created pollution. There are three types of pollution. Air pollution is the pollution of air. Water pollution is the pollution of water. Air and water is polluted. There are lessons on pollution in every textbook. And I guess you will agree that even this example is also problematic. We won't call it a good or efficient use of language. In the first case, I think you will easily understand that it is full of grammar problems. The basic problem with the code of the language. Such simple things as sentence structure, agreement, subject verb use, tense forms, and all those things. But in the second example, the grammar is fine. You won't find any grammatical error there. But still, you won't feel that it's a very good piece of language. You feel that there is some kind of problem. We can broadly call it the discourse problem. Problems that arise when we are handling larger chunks of text, not just single short sentences, but paragraphs, passages, long texts, books on the whole, whether in writing or in speaking. So those are the discourse level problems. Let's look at the third example. A senior manager asked a new recruit in the company whether he was a bachelor. Yes, sir, he proudly replied, in mathematics. It's a joke. I have picked it up from a very old issue of Reader's Digest. But because it's a joke, we understand that it has come out of some problem. There is a problem here. We can see that this new recruit in the company have failed to understand the nature of the question when the manager asked if he was a bachelor. In normal circumstances, we will understand that the manager is asking about the marital status. Here, the candidate understands it as to be educational qualification because bachelor, the word, is used in both contexts. So what kind of problem there is? This problem is broadly called a social linguistic problem. And let's look at the last example, which is the example of a telephonic conversation. Junito wrongly phones a TV repair shop instead of a TV showroom. He is not interested in buying a TV but getting his TV repaired. He calls it, but it turns out to be a wrong call. The other person says, hello. Junito says, hello. Could you tell me the price of Samsung TV? Other person says, what do you want? A service call. Junito continues, 32 inches, Samsung, what price? The other person is puzzled. What do you want? How much to repair a TV? Junito continues, yes, color TV. I hope you will agree that this is again a failed communication. Both parties can't understand each other, and the purpose for which Junito made the telephonic call is not served. Now, what you would expect in normal circumstances? After the very first round of exchange, we realize that something is not right, something is amiss. So, for example, when Junito says, hello, could you tell me the price of the TV? The other person says, what do you want, a service call? That response should ring the bells. What we would do in such circumstances normally is to check whether we are talking to the right person. Junito doesn't bother and continues. So these two persons are on two different planes and they cannot communicate with each other effectively. What is happening here is sometimes called strategic problems. So what we saw were 4 examples of miscommunications or failed communications, but in each case, the problem related to the use of language was different. So it's not enough to master the grammar and vocabulary of a language to be able to use it competently. Competent speakers need much more than a command of grammar and vocabulary. In a funny way, there is a definition or there is an explanation of what does it mean to have mastery of a language. So when do we say that we have a commanding mastery of a language? We know a language at the native speaker level, another language, not our mother tongue. And the answer is, if we can love in that language, if we can fight in that language, if we can curse and swear in that language, and if we can understand finer jokes, subtle jokes in the language, then it's a proof that we have mastery of that language. So can you fight in English? How many curse or swear words do you know in English? I remember at a training session during the coffee break, a teacher approached me and said that he really desperately wanted to know several swear words in English because no textbook teaches them, no training program teaches them. And he felt, very rightly felt, that without that, his English would be incomplete. Very correct. And then I told that I can conduct a training program in swearing, but I'm not very good at it myself because I'm not a native speaker. But there are words, there are dictionaries. And I shared a few examples with him. I hope he has picked up some swear words by now. Anyway, so what we are talking of is the ability to communicate well. If we consider language as communication, then we must have different kinds of competences to be able to communicate well. In your course material, there is a reference to Dale Hymes, who was the first person to systematically look into what it means to be communicating well. From a language point of view, what kind of skills and knowledge do we need? And building on that, Canale and Swain later developed a model of communicative competence, according to which this competence has four different parts: grammatical competence, discourse competence, social linguistic competence, and strategic competence. If you remember, the four examples I showed you in the beginning are related to each of those four skills. So, grammatical competence simply means knowing the basic rules and the system of that language: grammar, vocabulary, syntax, pronunciation. In other words, it's called the code of the language. Discourse competence is the ability to handle larger chunks of language. For example, to be able to give a speech for 10 minutes, to have a conversation with someone on familiar topics for an extended period of time, to read, let's say, 5, 6 pages short story or long essay. So these are the examples where we are handling larger pieces of text, large chunks of language, which have their own challenges. Social linguistic competence is something which is rarely addressed in our work as teachers of English and our materials in textbooks and even in assessment. But it means that the ability to use appropriate language depending on the context. In our mother tongues, we know how to use different varieties of our mother tongue in different situations. So we do not talk with our principals. Imagine that we are all using our mother tongues, but we will still be using different kinds, different varieties of our mother tongue while talking to our principal, talking to a shopkeeper in a grocery shop, giving a speech, speaking at a formal meeting, talking to our kids. In all these different situations, we will be using different varieties of our mother tongue because we know when to use which kind of language. So, for example, when we meet our principal on arriving at the school, we will not say, "Hi, principal," because we know that even if hi is a form of greeting, it is not appropriate in this context. So that kind of competence. And finally, strategic competence is our ability to manage barriers, problems, gaps in communication. So for example, you say something and the next person says, eh? And that tells you that you are not clear. The person hasn't understood you. So what you do normally, you rephrase, you repeat, you use different words, you probably give examples. So what you are doing, while talking, you came across a problem, you saw a gap in communication, and you used a variety of strategies to overcome that gap. This is strategic competence. And together, they all constitute communicative competence. So, a good user of language knows the system of the language, can handle larger pieces, also understands which formats are used or how to use the language in formal settings, informal settings, neutral settings, etc., and can handle gaps and crisis in communication. Right? Let's come to the second theme, language and identity. Let's just simply stop at the basic question, what do we mean by identity itself? In very simple terms, identity is the question, who am I? And whatever you tell in response to this question will be a part of your identity. Our identities are extremely complex, and therefore, there is no one single answer which covers everything. So, depending on different situations, we give different answers to this. But all those are ultimately parts of our identity. Uh, the old view of identity was a bit fixed, a bit static. And we looked at identity as a set of characteristics which were unique to an individual. And we believed that this set was constant, fixed forever throughout the life. And this identity had nothing to do with language, nothing to do with our context. The identity remained unchanged across the context. That was the old view. However, the modern view is completely different. We say that identity is not given ready-made, it is constructed, it is socially constructed. Our identity is born out of our participation in the society, and it's a dynamic product, dynamic in the sense constantly changing product of our social, historical, and political context. It also emerges out of our own experiences, and it is very deeply, inseparably connected with our culture and our language. And I will try to explain this. Let us look at one example. Some of you may be familiar with this person, Hall Berry. So Hall Maria Berry, born August 14, 1966, is an American actress. Berry won the Oscar for Best Actress for her performance in Monsters Ball, a 2001 film, becoming the only woman of African American descent to have won the award. Now, this description tells you so many different features about this person's identity. For example, her name, or her age, or even the period during which she was born. You are all familiar with Gen Z and Gen Alpha and Gen Beta and millennials and bloomers. There is a current fashion of naming every generation. And if you know someone's year of birth, you know which generation that person belongs to, and probably you start drawing conclusions about that person's identity, right or wrong. You also have nationality of this person, what her profession or occupation is, what her gender is, what her race or ethnicity is. And all these are aspects or parts of her identity. Her identity is all of these together plus a lot more. For example, her achievements, winning an Oscar, and many more things. I'm deliberately not going into too many details because it's a huge uh, topic. But I would just like to point out that our identity has three different dimensions. One part of our identity is who we are as individuals, a single person. And when I say my name is Amol, when I say I am a man, when I say I'm so many years old or that I was born in this year, I'm talking about myself as an individual. And that is my personal identity. But at the same time, I'm also a member of a large family. I'm also a member of an English teacher community. I was also part of a university. I live in a city, and within that city, I live in a locality. So, as a participant of all these different smaller groups, I have another identity. For example, father or husband or even grandfather, son, these are also parts of my identity, but they are referring to a small group. Or a teacher trainer. Ganga sir was talking about my work in the beginning. Those are parts of my identity. I'm a Nagpurian at the moment. I was a Delite for some time. So those are also or were also parts of my identity. And then a third aspect is much larger. When I'm the member of a large caste group or a large ethnic group or a nationality, then that is another much larger overarching aspect of my identity. So when I call myself a Maharashtrian, or when I say that I'm an Indian, that's also my identity, but that identity is related to my belonging to much larger community. Now, where does language come in? Because our focus is to look at relationship of language with identity. And let me tell you a very old, it's a biblical story actually. After their victory over the people of Ephraim, the Gileads applied a language identity test on the battlefield to sort out friends and foes. All of the soldiers were asked to pronounce the word shibboleth. Those who pronounced the first consonant as sh were friends. Those who pronounced it s were enemies and therefore killed at once. So if you say shibboleth, you are a friend. If you say sibboleth, you are enemy. You will be killed. What is happening here is by the way of pronouncing something, people are divided into friends and enemies. In other words, their pronunciation, and pronunciation is an aspect of language. Their pronunciation decided their identity. We do it all the time on a much more cordial scale, I would say, much less problematic scale, much less dangerous scale. But when we listen to people, we immediately place them, oh, this guy looks like a Punjabi, or he sounds like a Bengali, or she sounds like a Malayali person. Or even when we listen to others speaking our own mother tongue, we can place them. When I listen to people speaking Marathi, I can place them. I can say, oh, this guy looks like a Puneri from Pune, or this person looks like from Western Maharashtra. This person looks like someone from Vidarbha. I can even say from their pronunciation, this looks like an uneducated slum dwelling person, or this looks like a highly educated person. So we place people by the use of their language. In that sense, language influences, shapes our identity. I have an eye on the chat box, and I can see the chat box is running a lot of messages coming one after another, and lots of very interesting comments. Unfortunately, I won't have time to go into them while I'm speaking. And what we agreed with Ganga sir was to take the questions at the end and thematically sorted, because there are too many to address at this time. Let me also remind you that on the last slide, when I thank you, I have also given my email and my phone number. If you think your questions are not addressed here and you still want them to be addressed, feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to be of any assistance. So what is the role of language in identity? The roles could be implicit or explicit. The implicit roles are, what does language do? language names things. When a child learns that this is called a table, or that thing is called a TV, or this person is called mama, or that person is called a teacher, or this is called school and this is bus, the child is learning names. How languages names things, that's an implicit role in creating our identity. Related to that is also how languages create types and stereotypes. And I would just like to request you to be a little bit patient, because when we come to the third theme, culture, you will see examples of this very clearly. Explicit roles is the ones I was just talking about, how people use language, which language they use, which varieties they use, how they use. They all uh, contribute to that person's identity. When we shift between languages, for example, we very routinely mix English with our mother tongues, English with Hindi, English with Marathi, or Marathi with Hindi. There is a social, it's a social phenomenon, and there are a whole range of reasons why we do that. It's not just simple, innocent mixture of two languages. For example, if you are speaking in Marathi or Hindi and keep on mixing English words, you sound smart. If you do the other way around, you speak English but keep on mixing Hindi and Marathi words, people may laugh at your English or may think that your English is poor. Because languages have different kinds of prestige values in a society. And we adopt those languages accordingly. So let me give a couple of examples. Now, I said that language names things or beings. Now, if someone is called a man or a guy or a chap or a person, these are four labels, different labels for the same thing. But each label will have so many different connotations. And they are not interchangeable, because if you use one person in place of, one word in place of another, you might be creating problems. So how do those differences come in? These are the ways in which languages build various kinds of meanings into labeling. Similarly, words like friend, buddy, pal, chum, mate, there are very clear differences when you can use what. Can I check with someone? Ganga sir, do you hear a whistling sound in the background?
I think not.
No, that's my fault, because there is very heavy wind going on outside and a window behind me is whistling. But I wanted to make sure whether you are disturbed by it or not.
No, whistling sound is not there, but
Oh,
I was
good.
thinking of audio. No, there is no sound. Perfectly
Good,
fine.
good, good. I'm safe then. Thank you. Similarly, about accent, style, vocabulary, etc. Rather than giving an example, let me see if you can hear this video now. I have made the volume full. Let me make the volume full. Can you hear anything?
I think not so.
Okay.
If you try to play it on YouTube, it should play, or maybe outside somewhere.
I don't have a ready link here, but let me see just a moment if there are any setting options.
Or if you have the same audio in your mobile, then it will play. If you
That's enough. Let me give me a minute.
yes, sure, sure.
I'm sorry, just it's taking a little longer. I think I will need to change the speaker for a moment. Can you hear it now?
Uh, I don't think so.
All right, all right. Uh, Leave it then. I will just tell you what it was. It's just a minute. Right. I hope the screen is still visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is there.
Yeah. So sorry about that. I was actually going to play an audio where someone is speaking in English, really very good English. And I was going to ask you to discuss what kind of person you would have in your mind when you listen to this kind of speech. And I have used it before in my class. I used to teach a course called Language, Society and Culture in Ambedkar University, Delhi. And listening to the talk, people would typically believe that this is a person who looks like a politician giving a political speech or someone explaining a sociological concept to uh, students or to a group of people, a gathering of people. But when I show them the original video, and you may search and check, and if possible, later I will share the link as well. The person turns out to be this beggar on a railway platform, and he speaks really good English. So that was the story. But the important point here is coming back to the issue that we were discussing, the relationship between language and identity. We have our own fixed imaginations about what kind of language would be used by which kind of people. And therefore, when we are faced with this kind of situation where only hearing the language gives us one kind of image, while the reality is totally unexpected, we are puzzled. And this was my way of just trying to show how language is very intricately related to our identity. So when we look at the three dimensions of our identity, at the level of individual identity, what kind of language we use. For example, I'm speaking to you now and you are listening to me. My way of speaking, the language I'm speaking in, my accent, the choice of words, etc., will also subconsciously, we are not often aware of this, but will also subconsciously build some kind of identity of mine in your minds. From my side, I have my own beliefs and ideas and perceptions about how language should be used, which language should be used where, whether my accent is good or not. All those will also form implicitly my share of identity. At the group level, what kind of dialects we speak collectively in the group? What are the collective features of use? Those are the aspects of our group identity. Just to give you a funny example, imagine that a group of students from a particular class have a set of words or labels for different things they come across. For example, students typically have labels for their teachers, or they have labels for subjects. There's kind of secret code they use within their group. Now, if a new student joins that class, until that student picks up this vocabulary, he will feel as an outsider. So this kind of shared usage makes you an insider or outsider. In other words, it contributes to your identity. At the national level, we are all familiar with lots of identity related issues. So Hindi speakers versus Bengali speakers versus Odia speakers or Assamese speakers, those kinds of crises and problems and debates have been going on for ages. Let's not go into much depth there. So how is language a source of identity? On the one hand, language is part of our behavior. I speak, I listen, I respond, I participate, I converse. These are all parts of my linguistic behavior. But at the same time, language also provides me words, vocabulary, various labels, which also influence my own way of identification. So language plays a double role there. On the one hand, language supplies identity, and on the other hand, language shapes identity. The words we use in language, the labels we use, that is the supplier side. And how we use language, how we speak, what accent we follow, how we mix two languages, all this is shaping our identity. Right. Let's come to the third part now. And in fact, this is probably the most important aspect of language, because language and culture, and you will notice that I am using a double-headed arrow here because they are so intricately, inseparably linked that we cannot talk about language without culture and culture without language. So that's why we say that in any language teaching program, course, textbook, material, training, we must bring in cultural issues. We saw an example right in the beginning how someone can misuse or fail to communicate if that person is not aware of the cultural side. So while culture shapes language, language also shapes culture. It's mutual, and we are going to see some examples of that. So this is a famous quote from Brown. A language is a part of a culture, and a culture is a part of a language. They are so mixed. Let's look at some examples. I'm going to show you 4 or 5 kinds of examples to show how language and culture are closely related. The first example is about relationship terms. And look at this relationship table. This, in technical term, this is called kinship terms. So these are all kinship terms in different languages. In Hindi, for example, the father's father is Dada, mother's father is Nana. Father's brother is Chacha and mother's brother is Mama. You can think of your own language and try to remember what terms are used there. Similarly, I have listed terms from English, Russian, Chinese, and Chichewa. This was a very happy coincidence. In one of my batches, I had a student from Malawi, and I asked her to give me the names for all these from her language, Chichewa, and this is what she supplied. The important point here is actually 2 points. One is how detailed a language is in these relationship terms. If you look at Hindi, every relationship has a different label or different word. Similarly, in Chinese. In Russian, some are common, some are different. In English, similarly. So, for example, that is the second point. So, English does not make a difference between the father coming from father's side and the father coming from your mother's side. To put it differently, a language like Hindi makes a clear distinction between relatives on your mother's side and relatives on your father's side. Chinese goes further, and many Indian languages also go further. And when they are talking about their uncles, they have separate words for the father's elder brother and father's younger brother, separate words. Or husband's younger brother and husband's elder brother. Many Indian languages also have that difference. The important consideration here is why some languages have chosen to be so detailed and some others have not. Culturally, I mean, the one important argument goes like this. Culturally, we have a hierarchy between husband's relatives and wife's relatives. Sasural wale and maike wale. There is a clear cultural hierarchy between them. And it is therefore important to differentiate between people from husband's side and people from the wife's side. This brings us back to the gender related issues where there is a hierarchy between man's side and woman's side. And because the culture is like this, the language develops to reflect that culture. This kind of distinction is not so important in English or Russian, and therefore the language did not have separate words for the maternal side and the paternal side. So this is an interesting example. In anthropological studies, you will routinely find people going into kinship terms to discuss social structures, family structures, and their cultural evolution. The second example is about personal pronouns. I, you, we, they, he, she, these are all personal pronouns. Here is a comparison of languages. So Hindi has two first person pronouns, three second person, and two third person. English has only one, and this is plural. Only one for the second person. Look at Japanese, such a wide range of first and second person. On the contrary, actually Japanese does not have any proper pronoun for he or she. Kare and kanoja actually in practice mean boyfriend and girlfriend. Sometimes you might say she as kanoja, but it's very rare. Again, why is this kind of diversity? So, for example, in second person in Hindi, we need to differentiate between more informal and intimate address versus very formal or respectful address, because the relationships need to be minded when we talk to others. And therefore, Hindi has these three variations. In English, you have just one. So here we see how language reflects the culture outside. The third another very common area is idioms and metaphors. English has this metaphor, casting pearls before a swine. Japanese says throwing gold coins to a cat. Hindi se bhais ke aage bean bajana. All the three have same meaning, but culturally, pearls and swine, or if we simply compare the animals, English has a particular cultural role for a swine, which Japanese has for a cat, which Hindi has for bhais. And therefore, idioms use a reference to those animals. Or similarly, another phrase, क्या तुम्हारे मुंह में दही जमा है? When someone is dumbstruck, someone keeps quiet, doesn't speak in an awkward situation, we use this phrase. English people would say, cat got you a tongue. Or Japanese would say, as if your mouth is full of water. Another interesting phrase in Hindi is Chattis ka akada. And this is dependent on the language very, very clearly. Chattis ka akada means people who are very hostile to each other. They are enemies of each other. And it depends on how this number is written. In Devanagari numerals, the number is written like this, which shows two people back to back to each other, facing in opposite directions. People who won't even look at each other eye to eye. People who would refuse to talk to each other. So the way the numbers are written, we are using this as a metaphorical example. Chattis. This is irrelevant in English or other languages which are not using Devanagari numerals. So other languages would have some other kinds of metaphors based on their linguistic structure. Similarly, we also have cultural symbolism. In Nigerian languages, red is an unlucky color. In China, red is a lucky color. So when we say, I am having my red days now, a Nigerian would be saying this with great great sadness, while a Chinese would say the same thing with a lot of happiness, because red will have different connotation. Until 19th century, blue was the color of girls and pink was a typical color for boys. Now it's the reverse. If a baby girl is born, the house is colored pink with pink things. So this has a reversed over centuries. Red color in financial and economic terms shows downward trend in USA, upward trend in Japan. Two opposite trends, opposite uses. Green shows upward in USA, downward in Japan. So when you say a statement like the company is in the red, it means it is making loss in USA and making profits in Japan. So even when we look at languages and how they are structured, we can't escape the cultural undercurrents. A very important area is taboos and euphemism. What are taboos? Taboos are those things which are not allowed to talk about in any society. Every society has its own cultural taboos. For example, eating pork in some cultures, you can't talk about that. Or asking a woman's age, it's not allowed. A male complimenting a woman, it's not allowed in some cultures, Middle Eastern cultures. For example, a man cannot say to a woman, what a nice dress, not allowed. It's inappropriate. Talking about toilets, talking about sex, those things we don't talk openly, explicitly, publicly. So those are taboos. So whenever we face taboos in our language, what we do, we develop euphemisms. So when something is not allowed to talk about, we find alternative ways or indirect ways so that we can talk about it, so that things are not unpleasant and we can talk about them. So for example, instead of saying toilet or urinal, we say restroom or washroom. Instead of saying a blind person, deaf person, etc., we say differently able, demand. Instead of saying someone died, we say left for heaven. These are euphemisms. Next point is names and family names. Highly culturally loaded. You won't believe at first. So our personal names are probably the most crucial part of our identity, but they are also reflection of the culture. Typically, in every generation, parents try to name their children to sound modern. This has been observed as a common tendency. But they also often express, names of children often express the expectation of parents or social attitudes or religious beliefs, etc. Uh, there is a very interesting example of hundreds of girls named Nakoshi in Western Maharashtra or China in West Bengal. Both words have the same meaning, unwanted. In our patriarchal society, the birth of a girl child is considered not a welcome thing. And when a girl is, I mean, parents go on taking chances hoping for a son. And if a girl is born, they believe that it's an unwanted girl. And they actually name that girl as Nakoshi or China, unwanted. In Western Maharashtra, in the last 20 years, lots of NGOs have taken very active initiative to officially change the names of thousands of girls who are called Nakoshi and completed legal process because it's a very, very unfair identity marker for them. Just imagine if someone asks, "What's your name?" and you say, "My name is Mr. Unwanted Someone." It's humiliating. Family names, for example, you will be surprised how much culturally loaded information they carry. Look at these surnames, just random examples. Being Indians, you can read a lot in these surnames. You can see their ethnicity, their nationality, even sometimes their social class, their status, etc. You can guess all this because you are familiar with the culture. And therefore, coming from the same culture, we can see what information is already loaded into these names. Compare this with another set where the culture is not so familiar. And when we look at such kinds of surnames, most probably we might say that some are Canadian, some are Nepali, some from Sri Lanka, some from Nigeria, that's all. But we won't be able to talk about their state, their caste, their social status, etc., the way we do here. And the last point is this marked and unmarked language. In every language, we have this phenomenon. A non typical use, unusual use, or unusual form is called a marked form in comparison with a regular or common form, which is called unmarked form. Typically, the broader dominant or default form is unmarked, and the secondary one is marked. Let me give examples to make this point clear. But we must remember before that some uses are called normal uses, and therefore they are unmarked, while others are called irregular marked form. Uh, when we look into a dictionary, the class of this animal is called horse. All animals belonging to this category will be called horses, within which you will have males and females, and the females will be called mares. So when you look at an animal, whether it is female or male, you will call it a horse. Similarly, when you look at the class as a whole, it is called cow, and one variety is called bull. So the normal dominant use is cow. Another example, when you ask someone, how old are you? It's a very, very normal question. You will not pay special attention to it because old is the normal thing. It's unmarked. But as soon as someone says, how young are you? Your attention is immediately caught because this is unusual use. This is marked use. Similarly, we have words like fireman, air hostess, man-made, mankind, etc., which are normalized, normal use. We don't say air host or we don't say woman maid. Those are unmarked. The politics here is that saying man is a normal use. And by definition, by extension, if you say woman maid, then you are making a special, unusual, really limited kind of use. Similarly, he as the standard pronoun for everyone, whether man or woman, male or female. Every student must show his ID, irrespective of the fact that students could be girls and boys. So this is the normal used. How it is normalized? By the dominant patterns of the language. Fair and lovely. Fair is normal. I'm showing this because recently, well, not so recently, 6, 7 years ago, Fair and Lovely, that famous brand of cosmetics, decided to pay attention to this current trend where people try to resist such markers of, let us say, racism or such markers of unwelcome identities, etc. And therefore, they have changed their brand name to Glow and Lovely. So Fair and Lovely is now Glow and Lovely. And for men's varieties is Glow and Handsome. So Hindustan Unilever has changed it as a good company, as a good business practice. So in social classes, we talk about differently abled because abled is supposed to be normal. So if you want to talk about disabled people, try to bring them among normal people. Or I'll take this example of poverty line. Why don't we have a richness line instead of poverty line? We talk of people below poverty line, above poverty line. Why should we not talk about people below richness line, below poverty, above richness line? So these are ways of normalizing things, how language normalizes things. Similarly, how languages treat abnormality, madness, what kind of words are used, what kind of expressions are used. That's another very glaring example of how culture and language interact with each other. So I'm going to stop by summing up what we covered so far. We first looked at communication and language and what it means to be competently communicative. Then we looked at language and identity, saw 3 dimensions of our identities and how language supplies our identity on the one hand and shapes it on the other. And lastly, we looked at the relationship between language and culture, tried to see how they are inseparable from each other. And to do that, we looked at various kinds of examples of kinship terms, pronouns, idioms, metaphors, etc. So this is where I would like to stop. And thank you so much for your patience. Here is my email and my mobile phone. In case you want to contact me, I'll be happy to be of any assistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for discussing the topic at length and giving a lot of examples. I could see the chat box. People have commented a lot. They could easily relate to the topic, and it was very easy for them also to see how connected the topic is for everyone. So thank you very much, sir. There are some questions before we take up. I have shared the questions on the screen as well. We took the help of AI to merge all these questions together, and these questions are there. We have 2 minutes for each question. There are 5 questions, and we'll get around 10 minutes. The first question is asked by Vaishali Thakur, Deepika, and Vijay Lakra. The question is, how can English language teaching help students learn English for global communication while also respecting their mother tongue, local culture, and identity? So maybe learning a foreign language and teaching a foreign language while they also have a connect at the root language or mother tongue.
I guess the reason the question is asked is because learning English is not like learning a foreign language in our country. There are lots of political, social, cultural, and other implications of learning English. We are worried that English is harming the interests of our own languages, or people who learn English may not respect their mother tongues or local cultures or identity much. We don't have such concerns when we think of learning Russian, for example, or Japanese or German or French. The reason being, English has a very different historical and cultural status in our country. Therefore, as teachers of English, we have uh, greater responsibilities in comparison with other kinds of teachers. I personally don't believe that learning English is automatically harmful for our mother tongues, our cultures, our identity, etc. Just imagine that tomorrow English disappears from India. Will that automatically make Hindi, Marathi, Assami, Oriya, Bengali, whatever stronger? No, because for years we have been neglecting the development of our languages and conveniently using English as an excuse. It is true that a lot of money went into English, but English is just one reason, and removing that reason will not automatically change the situation. So, what we can do, two things come to my mind. One, when we are looking at English language, and remember, the cultural side of English is not Western. As I said, I have a different opinion on this question because the way English is taught in our country is not, remember the word I'm using, taught. So I'm talking of schools and colleges and university, formal teaching, is not dominated by Western culture. Our textbooks, our classroom teaching does not bring in Western culture to a huge extent. It's a tiny thing. The Western influence, which raises this problem about disrespecting our mother tongue, our own culture, identity, etc. That Western culture comes from outside exposure. Our mobile phones, our apps, YouTube, songs, films, games, etc. That's where it comes from. And there, if we have no control on that, I don't think as teachers we can do much about that. We can, of course, point to the dangers. And I think that's all I have to say about this question. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm very helpful on that.
So thank you, sir. I think you are, because you know that language teaching is not something which is really responsible for the whole changes that is happening or Western influence. Rather than there are many other things that's bringing that. So again, we have the second question asked by Vaishali Thakur, Shilpa, Kayam, and Karuna Karam or Sojanya Rani. The question is, should we teach only standard English and native speaker culture, or should we also accept Indian English, local dialects, and Indian cultural examples in English classrooms? So it is like sometimes teaching RPs and blindly adhering to RP, or should we nativize English as well?
Uh, I will give a theoretical answer to this and a practical answer to this. The theoretical answer is, of course, no. We should not aspire for standard English pronunciation or standard English dialect uh, because that is not ethical, that is not pedagogically sound, that is not educationally correct. Neither should we aspire for native speaker culture. So that's the theoretical answer. The practical answer is, do we have an option? Do we have this option? Can you decide from tomorrow to teach only standard English and native speaker culture? I mean, let us be very honest with ourselves. This entire room, including myself, none of us can speak standard English, can we? My pronunciation is not standard, that British or native pronunciation. My pronunciation is Indian pronunciation. So, to my mind, this is an empty question. This is only a theoretical question with abstract interest. Practically, even if our country decide, let us say NCRT decides that every teacher must teach standard RP and native culture, in practice we will be unable to do so because we don't know, we don't speak, we don't have that standard English ourselves. What we try to follow is whatever Indian English we have, and that's fine. That's fine. And I guess that much of our ELT material classroom proceedings are already full of Indian culture. Very little overseas culture is coming in. So I don't see it as a big problem.
Right. So, sir, the next question is by the three people. Yeah, by Dwani Payan Roy, Lakshmi Negi, Preeti Mehta, Alifia Alamdar, Preeti Mehta. Uh, the question is, how are language and culture connected? How do idioms, metaphors, names, and expressions reflect people's culture, identity, and way of thinking? And what changes when they are translated into another language? So I think top part we have already almost answered. The point is that what changes when they are translated into other language? When we
Yep,
try to use the window of other language to translate it.
sure. Uh, Very rightly said. So I will not look at the first part because that's what we have been discussing, and I gave you examples as well. In translation, this is one of the hugely challenging areas and as well as fascinating area. Because names, idioms, metaphors are so culturally loaded, they pose the greatest difficulties in translation. Often, idioms cannot be translated because there are no equivalents in the target language. And what we do is sometimes try to find another idiom in that language which has a similar meaning. So in Hindi, you have bhais ke aage been bajana. So when you translate it into English, you will say throwing pearls before a swine. You won't translate as playing flute in front of a buffalo. You won't say that because the whole sense will be lost. Similar things people face when names are translated. Let me give you two interesting examples. One is from translations of Dostoevsky's novels. Uh, Let us take the famous novel Crime and Punishment. Each character in the novel has a Russian name. That name has a particular sense. Let me give a parallel Hindi example. Suppose you are reading a novel in which one character is called Utpatangwala. Another character is called, let us say, uh, Nilakshi. And you know that Nilakshi has a particular kind of eyes, and that's why she has been given that name. Utpatang has a particular behavioral trait, that's why he has been given that name. Similar kind of name Dostoevsky had given to his characters. Now, when you translate this into another language, do you translate the names as well? And it's a complex question. There is no easy answer. When you translate, you don't get very good equivalents. And if you don't translate, Raskolnikov is the hero of that novel, and Raskolnikov has a particular, very, very powerful sense in Russian, which immediately relates to the whole theme of the novel. But if you simply spell it in English, Raskolnikov, that original essence is lost. That is one. And the second example I want to give you is if you have come across East Asian people, Indonesian people, Japanese people, or Chinese people, you will find that most of them have a European name. Just because they say that people find their original Chinese or Japanese name difficult to pronounce. So someone would be called Angela, someone would be called Kim, but their original name would be Shijuan. Now, these people, we need to go and ask them, do they carry two identities? One local, original, native Chinese identity, and the other for the world. So these are the issues related to names and similar things about metaphors and idioms.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, for responding to the question. I hope the answer is, suggested, and the suggested answer is accepted and well taken. Now, the next question is by Debanjan Chakrabarti and Pooja Dhawan. Question is, how can teachers create an inclusive English classroom where students feel confident to speak, make mistakes, and use different accents or pronunciations and learn without being laughed at? They were asking that some students are feeling very shy because when they speak, the other students say that he's not speaking in right English, or he's making lots of errors and all. So learners feel shy. How can we create an environment where the language is inclusive and that makes learners feel a little more uh, more bold enough to speak in the class, or interact in the class?
My simple answer to that would be two things. One, teachers need extreme tolerance and patience. If they really want to have an inclusive classroom, a safe learning environment, basic requirement is huge amounts of patience and tolerance of mistakes in particular. And second thing is, we must change our ways of thinking about mistakes. Mistakes are often indications that children are trying, they are playing with language, they are struggling, and they will definitely begin with mistakes the way we began with mistakes when we were learners. And gradually, as one by one, we keep realizing our mistakes and correct some of them. Our mistakes become fewer. Well, we will make new mistakes, which is a very positive sign, which means we continue to play with language. So people are shy not because they are afraid of the language. They are shy because they are afraid of making mistakes. They are afraid of taking risks because, and I personally will hold the teacher responsible for this, because it is the teacher who has to ensure that mistakes are tolerated, not given too much importance, and often encouraged. I would say that, yeah.
Right, right. So thank you very much, sir. And the last question is by Karunakaran Sojan Nirani, Pravisha Prabhakaran, and Vijay Lakra. The question is, how does language influence society and communication? Can learning new words and expressions change students' attitudes and behavior? And how can cultural activities help students develop better communication? So let us focus on the last part. How can cultural, the whole question is over to you, but how can cultural activities help students develop better communication skills?
So very
Because
interesting,
we are
very
trying to answer the question how language influence society and communication, and you can reflect to the whole question, sir. Really the last
yeah.
part.
I assume that when you say learning new words and expressions means in the same language. For example, if the children are learning English, can learning new words and expressions in English change their attitude and behavior? 100% yes. Uh, just a broad comparison, a class 5 student with limited vocabulary and grammar of the language will have one kind of behavior and attitude about using English, while a class 9 student with much more developed vocabulary and grammar will have a different attitude. Not only that, when we start learning new words, we also start realizing new aspects of reality. We start understanding our world and ourselves better, and we start become increasingly confident about ourselves and our world. And that changes our attitude and behavior definitely. Coming to that last part, I'm not sure what you mean by cultural activities. Uh, I mean, if in the school sports week or annual gatherings, you have cultural activities like dance and singing and debates and etc. Definitely, those activities are they contribute in a big way to develop children's communication skills, because those activities provide real life opportunities to use the language authentically, not in a formal and stage managed classroom situation. So I definitely believe that cultural activities can help. Now, if you want in a planned way to use those activities to develop communication skills, then you have to work toward that thing. For example, if you are organizing a drama activity for communication skills, you have to ensure that during the practice, during the rehearsals, in other cases, children try to use English for communication. They struggle, they make mistakes, but as a good teacher, you are very tolerant and very patient. And through playing, they enrich their language. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you very much, sir, for interacting with the participants and discussing all these questions. Now, as usual, will pick one of the participants who have been an active listener throughout and have also interacted and raised a lot of questions. Since beginning, we have seen that Preeti has been there. Preeti, are you there? Preeti from Rohini, Sector 14, sir, if I'm
Yes,
right.
sir. Yes, sir.
Preeti. So you can provide your feedback, verbal feedback, and also provide a vote of thanks to sir. Please show
Right
yourself.
now? Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I find this session very, very interesting and very insightful. And I'm happy to interact with the sir. And there are so many things which we didn't know before this session. And I would look forward to have sir in our session more and more.
So right, sir. So sir, on this note, on behalf of all the participants, I think we have had consistency of about 150 attendance throughout. So thank you very much for having such a practical, hands-on discussion about the topic, because this is what the teachers were looking for. How is this related? And this will be really useful when they are addressing language in the classroom now. Not only the textbooks that they are dealing with, or the skills that they're dealing with, but also how when they are looking at the students' names, the area they are coming from, the culture they are they are there from. So all these things will certainly be there in mind, because as language teachers, it is us who also shape their learners' identity in the class. We create a sense of identity for them to take it further also. So this session must have been really useful, and as Preeti said, that this must be a platform where they must be looking for further similar sessions from you as well, sir. So on behalf of all the participants and on behalf of NCRT RI Bhopal and the whole team, sir, you are native to us also. You are the part of course creation, but still, from NCRT and the entire team of NCRT, would like to thank you very much for taking the session, sparing our time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll be happy if you take some more sessions on the topics related. We'll reach you certainly in time.
Let us see. Yeah, we'll plan that. Okay.
Right. Thank you. Have a nice day, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.